You've probably seen the headlines about US-Iran tensions absolutely everywhere, but what are the real-world consequences, beyond all the political noise? Well, today, we're going to dig into an analysis that argues these tensions are creating a series of massive ripple effects, shaking up old alliances and totally reshaping global power. Let's get into it.
So the first big question this analysis really dives into is this: what's the actual goal here? If you forget the talking points for just a second, what is the real endgame the U.S. is chasing with this whole pressure campaign? Well, according to this analysis, the answer isn't just about geopolitics. It all boils down to economics. The argument goes that by stirring up instability in the Middle East, the U.S. can disrupt the flow of oil from the Gulf. And if that happens, it could push global buyers toward American and even Venezuelan oil, which would boost sales and help fund a huge military presence. It's a massive, high-stakes economic gamble. Okay, but here's the thing. This whole strategy, the analysis says, it's starting to have some pretty serious unintended consequences right back at home. And that's the first major ripple effect, a growing division inside the United States itself. And we're not talking about some fringe voices here. According to the analysis, some really prominent political figures are publicly pushing back. You've got the governor of California and the mayor of New York voicing their opposition. You have influential senators like Chuck Schumer demanding de-escalation. And even major media outlets are starting to seriously question the whole premise of this conflict. And this internal pressure, it's not just staying in the political world. It's now hitting the military leadership, and hard. We're talking about one huge resignation that's really sent shockwaves through the administration. That's right, the U.S. Secretary of the Navy is out. Now, think about the timing here. The Navy is, a pretty critical piece of this whole military pressure campaign in the Middle East. So for the top civilian leader to just up and leave, that suggests some major disagreements are happening at the very highest levels about where this strategy is headed. So you've got these cracks forming at home, and that leads directly to our second ripple effect, a massive trust problem on the world stage. The analysis argues that all the inconsistent messaging is doing some serious damage to America's reputation as a reliable negotiator. Just look at this timeline. It really paints a picture of what that looks like. The analysis points to this pattern of setting ultimatums and then just taking them back. A 2-day deadline suddenly becomes 5 days, then 2 weeks. Then a 3 to 5 day deadline gets reported, only to be immediately denied. It's not just confusing, it basically makes any future threats or promises feel, well, pretty empty. And if you want a perfect example of how this trust is just completely falling apart, you have got to hear this bizarre story about the 8 women. President Trump claimed he stepped in to stop the execution of 8 women in Iran, even saying 4 would be freed right away. But Iran's judiciary just fired back, calling the whole story fake news and saying the women were never even sentenced to death in the first place. You literally have 2 completely different realities being presented to the world. I mean, it got so surreal that, according to the source, Iranian embassies started sarcastically joking that Trump had saved AI women. And that gets to the real problem, right? When the conversation gets this broken, when you can't even agree on basic facts, how can you possibly find a real path to diplomacy or de-escalation? All right, so this brings us to the third and maybe the biggest ripple effect of them all, the alienation of America's traditional allies, particularly in Europe. All the inconsistent policies and aggressive rhetoric are causing a fundamental realignment. So this all leads to a pretty startling question, doesn't it? After decades of being close allies, who do Europeans actually see as the bigger threat on the world stage right now? And the answer, based on a survey cited in the analysis, is, well, it's pretty stunning. A full 36% of Europeans now see the United States as a bigger threat than China. China's at 29%. Just think about that for a second. That is a huge reversal from the recent past, when countries like Russia and China were always seen as the main threats. And look, this isn't just feelings or poll numbers. It's leading to real, actual political consequences. You have leaders in Spain, France, and Italy becoming way more openly critical. 4 European nations have reportedly cut defense ties with Israel, a key U.S. ally. And over in Hungary, a pro-Trump leader was just handed a massive election defeat, and his successor is vowing to enforce international law. Things are changing. So when you have this kind of shifting landscape where traditional allies are pulling away, it creates a power vacuum. And that creates openings for other countries to make some really bold moves. And according to this analysis, that's exactly what Iran is doing.
Okay, so to get what Iran does next, we just need a quick reminder about the IAEA. This is basically the UN's nuclear watchdog, the group that's responsible for going in and checking nuclear facilities to make sure they're being used for peaceful stuff. So here's the move. The analysis, citing Press TV, says that Iran has made a huge diplomatic play. It has formally demanded that Israel's well-known but officially undeclared nuclear program be opened up to IAEA inspections. This totally flips the script, right? It puts a key U.S. ally under the exact same microscope Iran has been under for years. It's a massive power play, and one that probably wouldn't have been possible without this feeling that global alliances are shifting. And that's where this analysis leaves us. In a world where these old, reliable alliances seem to be cracking under the pressure of new policies, it raises a final and really critical question. When the old powers start pushing their allies away, who steps up to write the new rules of the game?